So there are reports out today that South African teams are going to be leaving Super Rugby going forward. I've got jackhammers outside. I got my son in the other room watching cartoons because my wife's out for the day. But I thought this is a pretty big one, so I better just make a quick kind of vid and see where things are at. So reports still unconfirmed at the minute, but and kind of varying in details. But the main ones I've seen say that the Sharks. Oh, hey son, what you doing? You gonna go back and watch your cartoons? Okay. Sharks. Sharks will be leaving first for the 2019-2020 Pro 14 season, and followed quickly by the Stormers and the Lions for 2020-21. Some reports I've read also mentioned the Bulls. But, yeah, those were the 3 out of the 4 teams that were kind of quickly suggested. The main factors for the departure are apparently the travel to Australia and New Zealand, which, has never been palatable for the South African teams. It's always been kind of a handicap. The fact that, the Aussie and New Zealand teams can just jump across the Tasman to play each other. It's not really a big deal, but the South African teams have to go on a kind of like a full month-long tour when they have their games in Australasia. Time zones, of course, that's always been a really big one for Super Rugby. Like New Zealand fans, half of them don't even get up to watch their own team at 3 o'clock in the morning, let alone any South African derbies. So there's definitely an issue with selling the product when the varied time zones are a pretty big issue. So South African teams in Europe doesn't make much of a big deal if they're all kind of in that same time zone below Europe. And the loss of players to Europe. So that's, just South Africa has a ridiculous number of players playing abroad. Some of the guys in Super Rugby kind of top up their contracts in the off season with Japanese contracts, but it's not ideal. So I guess the thought is more South African teams join the Pro 14, so make it a Pro whatever. That increases the value of their deal, and maybe fewer players will jump ship, and more will stay based in South Africa, playing in a kind of European competition. So those all seem like pretty positives for South African teams. Obviously not playing New Zealand teams is going to be less than ideal. I know one of the main attractions, at least in New Zealand and perhaps in Australia, where guys are, they've got the opportunity to play multiple sports. Rugby league is the kind of big other one for guys in New Zealand. Lots of contracts up for grabs in rugby league. So one of the main attractions in Union is also the fact that, you get to play in France, you get to play in South Africa, you get to play in Australia, all these places around the world, Japan. You get to go to a lot of countries. Some guys, that's legitimately a factor. They don't want to just kind of play in a domestic Australian competition every week in, week out. But yeah, also I've seen people saying on the New Zealand side, good riddance, we don't need them. Who are you going to play? That's the main issue for New Zealand and Australia, is who do you play? And also the money. That's actually the main issue. Is the bulk of that broadcast deal is coming from South Africa. There's a hell of a lot more people watching TV in South Africa than in Australia and New Zealand. The Australian deal, Australia is a bigger country than New Zealand, but in terms of the pecking order of sports, rugby union's pretty down the list behind AFL, rugby league, even I think soccer, cricket definitely. And in New Zealand, we just haven't got the population to support big broadcast deals. And our main broadcaster, Sky, is kind of having financial issues of its own. So if this report is true, you'd have to think this is pretty much the death of Super Rugby as we know it. What will happen going forward kind of remains to be seen. As I said, these reports are still pretty unconfirmed. I think it still makes sense for the South Africans in terms of their teams. Like I said, not playing Kiwi teams, not getting that challenge is obviously going to be a drawback. But if they could remain in the Rugby Championship, I think that would kind of give them the best of both worlds. That'd be a win-win for South Africa. For Australia and New Zealand, I think there were also reports of them looking at kind of contingency plans if South Africa does leave, with North America being the main kind of spot. Obviously, that's where the money is. That's the holy grail of rugby, to try and get North Americans into the game, just with the financial power there. But does that mean having another few teams which aren't very good? I don't know. Obviously, the quality of the competition drops if you lose South African teams. So, yeah, it's all a bit of speculation at the minute, but I just kind of put that out there, see what's happening, and better go get my son before he breaks something, because I can hear him playing with stuff. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, and once we've got more information, I'll do a proper video with the details. All right, guys, that's it from me, and I'll talk to you again soon.